A few months ago, I started going to the gym because I wanted to practice a new habit of exercising and embracing something that is uncomfortable, and that is running. So I set a goal for myself to run 1.2 km about 3 times a week. And by now, these days, the goal of running this 1.2 km is pretty much an easy feat already. I could run without stopping, and just when I hit the 1.2 km mark, which I set for myself, I would stop. So last week I was challenged by a friend of mine who was coaching me to embrace discomfort to clock in 3 times of 4 km in 1 week. In my mind, I was contemplating whether I should negotiate with him to do this challenge the following week instead, because I knew my period was coming. And when girls are on their period, their body is just not in the best form because we're dealing with cramps, headaches, body discomfort, body aches, so on and so forth. I thought about it for a while, and I decided not to negotiate, to push it 1 week later. And I thought, might be interesting to just experiment with pushing my limits a little. So the last time I could remember running a 5 km thick marathon was probably more than a decade ago, and that was probably the longest I have ever done so without any training. It was a very, very painful 5 km, and I decided that I would never do it again. Like, why would I want to pay money to torture myself? So anyways, I had 7 days to complete this challenge before I next meet my friend coach on a Wednesday. And I made sure that I planned the running days in a way such that my legs had sufficient rest. So here's what I learned from this challenge. Previously, when I set my goal for 1.2 km, like that was all I did. But now with a new goal of 4 km, I find myself achieving a new personal best. 4 km not just once, but 3 times in 1 week for somebody who doesn't like running. Pretty much makes it like a 12 km in a week. And prior to the challenge being, given to me, I would never have thought that I would be able to achieve that. Number one, I probably couldn't care less about stretching myself to run further since I'm not a big fan of running. Number two, I was comfortable with my 1.2 km and I set my standards, I would say, pretty low. Well, to be fair, deciding on 1.2 km was a stretch for me when I first decided to embark on a new habit of running. But along the way, as my body becomes accustomed to running this 1.2 km, it was no longer a stretch. It's kind of like something that I could easily do without much discomfort. As I pushed myself to achieve my 5 km mark on the treadmill, I could see my reflection just staring back at me, on the glass window. And with my reflection staring back at me, I was like, trying to achieve that 4 km. I knew I had the opportunity there and then to choose my thoughts in the moment. And the thoughts I had was, no more mediocrity, no more settling, raise my standards. And one foot in front of the other, one foot in front of the other, I kept going. Until finally, the distance finally showed 4 km. When we set our standards low, we settle for less than our full potential. Then we become complacent, we become comfortable, and we become lazy. To a certain extent, choosing mediocrity is a protective mechanism because when I set the standard low, I protect myself from disappointment, discouragement, and from discomfort. And as I begin to dig deep, I realized that perhaps the root of my existential crisis, the struggle with the meaninglessness of life, the spiraling to depression in my younger days, and the feeling of emptiness stems from my acceptance of living a mediocre life. A mediocre life fueled by my fear of imaginary judgment from others, a life where I do not have something to live or fight for. Being stretched beyond my comfort zone is uncomfortable, but it is also the key to me having something to work towards. And with that comes the feeling of purpose and aliveness. Even though the goal of running 4 km is nothing grandiose like, aiming for $1 million in my bank account, But even something so small gave me that sense of achievement and purpose. With that, I shall conclude this video slash podcast. And I hope my reflections inspire you to maybe stretch yourself a little and set small goals that helps to point you to the direction you want to head to in life. If you too struggle with existential crisis and the meaninglessness of life, I haven't figured it all out yet, but the truth is, who has? So signing off here, one life, own it. Yours truly, Hosanna Grace.